Welcome back. Today we're talking about one of my favorite features in this laundry room or laundry area, and that is this countertop. Hi, I am Annika and I am all about demystifying DIY, and today we're talking about how to build this using plywood, which makes it super budget friendly and it's also super duper easy to build. So let's get to it. Now, before I dive into exactly how I built this, let's talk about the configuration. Now, I have a cabinet, a wall, and nothing on this side. And you might have a similar situation, or you might have 3 walls, which is something you would have if your laundry is inside of a confined laundry room or inside a closet, or you might not have anything on either side. Now, the great thing about this configuration is that I get to show you exactly how to build and install a countertop, no matter what your situation. So whether you have 3 walls or no walls on the 2 sides, so you can easily adapt this tutorial and build a countertop for your laundry. Let's start building. We need some 2x2 boards to build the cleats for the countertop to rest on. And my favorite way of making 2x2s on the cheap is to buy 2x4s and split them up. Now it's time to mark exactly where those cleats are going to be attached. And in order to do that, you want to not only take into account the height of the washer and dryer, but also take into account that slight gap that's going to be there between the countertop and the appliance. It's extremely important to make sure that the cleats are level. Now this one's going to be screwed into the cabinet, so I'm using wood screws to do that. And I pre-drilled and attached the screws. Made sure the cleat was level as I attached the cleat into the cabinet. Now it's time to attach the drywall, and I followed the same method to make sure that the cleat was level and marked it. And then I also marked the studs on the wall. I transferred that measurement onto the cleat itself, pre-drilled for long screws that I could attach into the studs. Now, the problem over here is that there's only one stud right here, and there's no studs all across this. So what I need to do in this case is I'm going to be using toggle bolts to hold this together. Ideally, 1 toggle bolt and 1 stud, 1 screw into the stud would probably be enough. But I'm paranoid, so I'm going to put 2 toggle bolts and 1 screw into the stud. I found the exact location of the stud and transferred that over to the cleat. And then I used the long screw to attach the cleat onto the wall, made sure it's level, and then I made the holes for the toggle bolts. Now, using toggle bolts is pretty straightforward. You want to make bigger holes so the entire toggle bolt can fit through it, and you want really huge holes in the wall so that the wings of the toggle bolt can go through. I do have a full detailed tutorial on how to use toggle bolts, so be sure to take a look at that. But once I had attached the long screw in the stud and the 2 toggle bolts, that cleat was not going anywhere. Now it's time for the plywood for the countertop. I cut down the plywood to the size I needed, but I did cut the depth about 1 inch larger. And this is to account for the variations you see in the wall, and you'll see what I mean in just a little bit. And while I had my saw out, I also cut down the plywood for the side support. Okay, so the size is good, but there is obviously a lot of variation in the wall itself. So there's a small gap here where it's butted up against the wall really well. So I'm gonna have to correct for that. And usually for situations like this, you can do what is called scribing and really conform it to the wall. However, because this is a nice gap that I can measure, I can use that already and make that cut, and then we'll see if it fits. If not, we'll go ahead and scribe it. And for situations like this, I like to use millimeters because they are so much more accurate and easier to read, at least to me. So let's do that. So that is about 15 millimeters. actually 17 millimeters. So I measured and marked 17 millimeters on one end of that plywood. And on the other end, we're just going to go to the very edge of the plywood. So I used a straight edge and drew that line. And then I used my jigsaw to cut that line off. And now it's time to check if that worked, which it did. So I went ahead and made the cutout for the drain pipe covers. And now it's time to give the countertop its finishing touches. I wanted a nice thick edge look to the plywood. So I cut up strips of plywood and glued and clamped them all around the edges that would be visible on the outside. Once the glue had dried overnight, I covered those edges with white edge banding. Once that edge banding was cleaned up and sanded off, it pretty much looked like a solid piece of thick plywood. To finish up the countertop, I gave it a light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper, wiped off all the dust, and I wanted a light yellow tinge to the countertop, so I used spar urethane to get that yellow out of the plywood. But I wasn't quite happy with how the finish was turning out, so I turned to my current favorite, the Total Boat Halcyon Clear Coat. I love this clear coat. It is so easy to apply. It dries up super fast, and I was able to apply 3 coats within one day, and the finish is nice and durable. Now for the side support. The side support needs to be attached in place, and the best way to do that is to attach a cleat on its side and attach that cleat into the wall. So I attached that cleat to the support using pocket hole screws. Now I'd already painted the side support. I put the support next to the dryer, and I did have to play around with a few shims to make sure that it was level. And then I just attached it with long screws into the drywall, into the stud, through those cleats. And now it's time to put the countertop in place. And the countertop rests on the cleats as well as the side support. And that is it. It's a nice solid countertop. Now I did not attach the countertop to the side support because I want to be able to slide the countertop off if I need to access the washer and dryer controls in the back. In fact, the power points are underneath the countertop as well. But if you wanted to, you could attach a metal brace to the side support and attach it to the countertop right here so that it stays in place. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you like this tutorial, let me know as well. I love reading each and every one of your comments. And if you want to see more details of this laundry room, like the pull-out drying racks and how I built the cabinet, be sure to check out the videos that are linked right here. Until next time, bye.